Welcome to the Secure Cloud Executive Briefing with Peter van Eyck, where you will get senior-level insights to help you accelerate and mature your cloud initiatives.
Ever since I studied computer science, and I must admit that is quite a while ago, I was fascinated by the productivity of software development. There can be a difference of a factor of 10 between one individual and another, a difference of 10 between one team and another. I always wondered, how did that work? Fast forward a couple of decades later, and then there is Scrum. And now we've started to use Scrum in our teaching at the university as well. So I dove into it a little bit to understand how it works. What is development of software? Development of software is actually just learning how stuff works. Because you never write the same piece of software twice. And if you do, you're doing it wrong. But how do you learn best? Is that individually, or do you sit next to one another? Individually, you can go much faster, but together you go further, is a proverb that is often used. And even though individually you can go faster, you can also run around in circles faster. And this is where in Scrum the daily stand-up comes in. During the daily stand-up, all team members share their progress or lack thereof, their successes and their impediments. And the other team members help out and reflect on that and help everybody keep on the right track. Alone you go faster, together you go further. There's another way in which working together leads to better and faster results. And that is the practice of Scrum Poker. In Scrum Poker, everybody in the team makes an estimate of how much time a certain user story takes. A user story is a complete piece of work that you can deliver in a couple of days. Now, one team member may say, hey, I think this is going to take 2 story points, and another will say, well, I think it's going to take 15 story points. So everybody makes that estimates, keep their cards close to the chest, and then everything's laid out on the table and the extremes are discussed. How come this guy thinks it's 2 story points? And then he explains, well, it's actually that easy. We have this library over there, plug in a few parameters, and we're done. And maybe he's right. And maybe he's not. And the 15 story point person might say, well, this is all nice and cute, but have you considered these and these and these cases? And under that circumstances, it won't work, and so on, and so on, and so forth. Now, that person may be right, and maybe they're not. But the big point is that by talking this over, you will get those assumptions on the table and get to a clearer idea of what it's going to take. And if you know what it's going to take, then the planning is going to be much easier and more predictable. So at the end of a 2-week sprint, you will actually deliver what you promised. Working alone and working together also works when you have a customer as a team. Now, historically, the customer decided what they wanted to get built, and they had the budget. And this oftentimes led to so-called death marches, where the team was sweating it out every night and every weekend, building stuff that in the end didn't turn out to be whatever the customer wanted. On the other extreme, it could also be that the customer is overestimating the amount of work that something is taking. And if you would have asked the team, they would say, well, you want that? Hey, we could get it off the shelf. Easy peasy. The other side is if you just give the team an unlimited budget, well, if you just give the team a big budget, they can produce beautiful things. Maybe. But maybe they're producing stuff that the customer is completely not finding usable at all. And in the 2-week sprint planning, what happens is that the team says, hey, here's what we can build for this amount of story points. You get to pick 20 story points out of this, dear customer. And the customer says, okay, I want that, I want that, I want that, and I want that. And if you have time left, do that as well. And by the way, could you also do this and that? Well, that may be for the next sprint planning. But that's the idea. And because it is predictable, after 2 weeks, this will actually be delivered. And that makes it fun for the team and for the customer. And then you go into the next sprint. Again, we're talking about alone you go faster, potentially, but together you go further. And this leads to a steady flow, a regular feature velocity that propels the team and the customer forward. And if that happens, there's a great energy, and it's called flow. This is a concept developed by Hungarian psychologist Csikszentmihalyi. Yes, I took some time to actually pronounce that name more or less correctly. And flow is a state of work, of learning, where you are between anxiety and boredom. Anxiety of, oh, this is way too hard for me or for us. Or boredom where you go like, oh, I can't wait until it's 5 o'clock. And also nothing happens there. Flow is that state in between. And people are most productive long-term when they are in flow. And Scrum, as a process, is more or less designed to get the team and the customer together in that state of flow. Alone you may go faster, but together you go further. And flow makes working and learning sustainable and fun.
Thank you for watching the Secure Cloud Executive Briefing with Peter von Egg. For more information, go to www.clubcloudcomputing.com.